Echolocation. Imagine a sound so violent it could shatter glass. A noise that does not merely ring in the ears, but vibrates through the very bones of your skull. If we possessed the hearing to perceive the world of a bat, the night would not be silent. It would be a deafening roar of ultrasonic machinery.
If you could hear bats flying at night, they would deafen us. They make louder sounds than almost any other animal, equivalent to a pneumatic drill or jet engine.
To a human, the dark is a void. It is the absence of information. But for the bat, darkness is not an empty space. It is a landscape constructed from echoes. They navigate through a sensory paradox, using sound to see what light cannot reach.
This is not a continuous stream of vision. It is something more fragmented. I imagine they are seeing the picture of the world in quite a stroboscopic way. Instead of a smooth movie, the bat experiences the world as a series of rapid acoustic snapshots, building a mental map from the time it takes for a pulse to strike an object and return.
This ability to sense the unseen is not a modern marvel. The curiosity surrounding how these creatures navigate in total darkness dates back centuries. In the 18th century, observers like Spallanzani and Duran began to ask if bats used their eyes or something more hidden to find their way. These early experiments laid the groundwork for a question that continues to haunt evolutionary biology. It is a question that moves beyond simple mechanics and into the realm of perception. What is it actually like to be a bat? To answer this, we must understand the physics of the pulse. We must look at how a creature can turn a scream into a map and a shadow into a solid object. The physics of the pulse. To a human, a quiet summer evening is a void of silence. But for a bat, the air is crowded with a deafening roar. They emit pulses that can reach frequencies as high as 200 kHz. This is the realm of ultrasound, a spectrum of sound that exists entirely above the human hearing limit of approximately 20 kHz. To understand the bat is to understand a world where silence is actually a violent, high-energy bombardment of acoustic data. Navigation in this invisible landscape is a matter of precise mathematics. The bat sends out a pulse, and that pulse travels through the air until it hits an object. The sound bounces back as an echo. By measuring the time delay between the initial pulse and the returning echo, the bat calculates the distance to its target. It is a constant, rapid-fire calculation of time and velocity. This relationship between frequency and wavelength is the key to precision. High frequencies produce short wavelengths. These small waves can bounce off tiny structures, such as the antennae of a moth, providing a detailed resolution that lower frequencies simply cannot achieve. A long wavelength might pass around a small insect entirely, but a short wavelength hits it, returning the data needed to strike. However, the medium through which these waves travel is never constant. The speed of sound is typically around 340 meters per second. But that speed is a variable. Changes in temperature and humidity alter how quickly sound moves through the air. For an animal relying on millisecond timing to map its world, these atmospheric shifts are significant. A slight change in the warmth of the air can shift the perceived distance of a target, requiring the bat to constantly adjust its internal mathematical model. Mapping a world in 3 dimensions requires more than just distance. The bat must also understand height. This is where the anatomy of the ear becomes vital. A structure called the tragus, located within the ear, helps the bat determine the vertical position of a target. By interpreting how sound interacts with this small, fleshy projection, the bat can distinguish whether a moth is flying above or below its flight path. The biological engine. To understand the bat, we must first understand the sheer violence of its voice. While humans perceive the world through a narrow band of sound, the bat operates in a realm of extreme energy. These creatures produce ultrasonic pulses that can reach frequencies as high as 200 kHz. For context, the upper limit of human hearing sits at roughly 20 kHz. If you could hear a bat flying through the night, the experience would be deafening. The sound energy produced is comparable to the roar of a pneumatic drill or a jet engine. Managing that level of acoustic power requires a radical anatomical overhaul. The bat's throat and larynx are not merely vocal organs, they are precision instruments built to withstand intense vibration. The physiological adaptations required to manage such sound energy are immense. It is a delicate balance. They must produce a signal strong enough to bounce off a tiny insect, yet they must also protect their own hearing from the returning echo. There is a theory that this vocal power and the mechanics of flight are not separate developments. Some researchers suggest a deep coupling between flight muscles and the lungs used to produce these calls. As a bat pumps air through its lungs to generate a high-pressure pulse, it also provides the power for flight. This suggests that the ability to fly and the ability to scream might have evolved in tandem, a single integrated system for life in the dark. The physics of motion adds a layer of complexity. When a bat flies, it is moving toward its target, which creates a Doppler shift. This movement changes the perceived frequency of the returning echo. To maintain a stable acoustic map, the horseshoe bat employs a sophisticated correction. It uses Doppler shift compensation, adjusting its own call frequency to account for its flight speed. It is a real-time, biological calculation that ensures the world remains stable, even at high speed. Yet, even with these adaptations, a mystery remains. We see bats resolving incredible acoustic detail, identifying the texture of a wing or the shape of a leaf. But there is a discrepancy. Current physiological models suggest a processing bottleneck. The speed at which these echoes return is so fast that it should exceed the limits of neural processing speed. We are left with a gap in our understanding. How does a brain process a world that is moving faster than the neurons can keep up?
I imagine they're seeing the picture of the world in quite a stroboscopic way.
The night sky is not silent. To a bat, the darkness is a chaotic storm of high-frequency pulses. A predator enters the fray, tracking a target through a sequence of rapid-fire sonic bursts. The bat's goal is simple: detect, track, and intercept. It scans the air with sound, calculating the distance to a moth by the time it takes for the echo to return. This is a high-stakes chase, moving at speeds that defy human perception. The predator closes the gap, its sonar painting a detailed picture of the prey's wing position and flight path. But the prey is not a passive victim. Evolution has granted the insect a way to fight back. Many species of moths have developed acoustic stealth to evade detection. They possess wing structures designed to absorb or scatter the bat's ultrasonic pulses. Instead of a strong, clear echo that reveals a solid shape, the bat receives a faint, blurred signal. This is biological camouflage. By minimizing their acoustic signature, these moths become ghosts in the bat's sonic world. Some moths have taken a more aggressive approach to survival. Tiger moths do not just hide, they strike back with sound. When they detect the approach of a bat, they release a series of high-frequency clicks. These clicks can serve two purposes. First, they act as a warning, signaling that the moth is toxic and unpalatable. Second, they function as a form of acoustic jamming. The clicks flood the bat's sensitive ears with noise, drowning out the returning echoes of the moth's body. For a moment, the predator is blinded by its own medium. This is a classic co-evolutionary arms race. It is a cycle of adaptation and counter-adaptation that has lasted for millions of years. As bats develop more precise sonar or higher frequency calls to pierce through the noise, moths develop even more sophisticated ways to hide or jam. This constant pressure drives biological innovation in both directions. The bat's ability to map a tiny, moving target forces the moth to evolve better stealth. In turn, the moth's ability to jam the signal forces the bat to refine its neural processing to distinguish prey from noise. The complexity of this struggle is immense. A bat's world is constructed from these fleeting echoes, a stroboscopic map of a world built from sound. Every flight is a battle of information, where the winner is the one who can best interpret the echoes of the dark. The genetic puzzle. For over a century, naturalists relied on what they could see. They divided the order Chiroptera into two distinct camps. On one side were the microbats, the small, noisy hunters that use sound to navigate the dark. On the other were the megabats, the larger, fruit-eating species that rely on sight and smell. It was a clean, logical division based on physical form. But the arrival of molecular biology has turned this tidy classification into a mess of contradictions. The old way of sorting bats was based on anatomy. If it was small and used sonar, it was a microbat. If it was large and ate fruit, it was a megabat. This distinction assumed that these two groups followed separate evolutionary paths. However, the DNA tells a different story. When scientists began sequencing genomes, the lines blurred. The genetic data suggests that megabats are not a separate group at all. Instead, they appear to be nested deep within the microbat lineage. This realization has sent shockwaves through the field of taxonomy. If megabats are actually just specialized microbats, a massive question remains. Did echolocation evolve only once in a single common ancestor? Or did it emerge multiple times in different branches of the tree? If it evolved once, then megabats must have lost the ability to echolocate as they moved into different niches. If it evolved multiple times, then the biological machinery for sonar is a repeatable solution to the problem of life in the dark. The debate is not just about DNA. It is about the very timing of bat evolution. Scientists look to the fossil record to solve the mystery of which came first, the wings or the whispers. There is a fierce disagreement over the evolutionary sequence. Some researchers argue that flight was the primary driver. They point to the cochlear structures in early fossils, which suggest these ancient creatures lacked the specialized hearing required for high-frequency sonar. In this view, bats learned to fly before they learned to listen. Others disagree. They look at the complex link between flight and sound. Producing loud, rapid pulses requires massive energy and precise control over lung compression and flight muscles. This physical coupling suggests that flight and echolocation may have evolved in tandem. The two systems might be two sides of the same coin, emerging together to allow a new way of life in the night sky. The fossil record remains silent on the final answer, leaving the puzzle incomplete. Echoes of human potential. For centuries, we viewed the bat as a biological curiosity, a creature of shadow and instinct. But the physics of their world is not just a marvel of nature. It is a blueprint for our own progress. By studying how a small mammal maps its environment through sound, we have unlocked new ways to see without light. This is the transition from biological survival to human innovation. The principles of the pulse extend far beyond the forest canopy. The logic of the bat is the logic of the radar. We use the time delay between a signal and its return to calculate distance, just as a bat does. We use the Doppler shift to detect movement, mirroring the way a horseshoe bat adjusts its own frequency to compensate for its flight speed. Our modern sensing technology, from maritime sonar to the radar guiding aircraft, owes its fundamental logic to these ancient acoustic strategies. But the most profound application is not in machines, but in the lives of people. For the visually impaired, the world can be a landscape of obstacles and unseen hazards. Modern engineering is now translating ultrasonic pulses into assistive technology. These devices use high-frequency sound to provide spatial awareness, effectively giving a sense of depth and distance to those who cannot see it. It is an attempt to replicate the stroboscopic mental map that allows a bat to navigate a cluttered forest in total darkness. We are now standing at the edge of a new sensory frontier. As we refine our ability to process complex acoustic data, we move toward expanding human capability itself. We are learning to listen to the structure of the world. If we can master the way a bat resolves the fine details of a moth's wing or the texture of a leaf, we may eventually augment our own senses. We are no longer just observers of nature. We are becoming its students, learning to see through sound.